Okay, so by now we all know ChatGPT, right? I mean, you've probably seen it, played around with it a little. But lately there's been all this buzz about this new AI model, DeepSeek R1. Have you heard of it?
Oh, yeah, definitely turning heads. What's so fascinating about it is that it's open source. Anyone can download it, play around with it, even run it on their own computer.
Whoa, wait. Run it on my own computer.
Yep.
So no relying on OpenAI or having to pay for API access.
That's right, unlike ChatGPT.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me, what's the story behind DeepSeek?
Well, it's a Chinese AI lab, but it's got a pretty interesting backstory. Started out as part of a hedge fund, actually, using AI for trading.
Oh, wow.
They got so good at it that they shifted focus, started developing these large language models, open source models.
Fascinating.
People are even calling them, get this, the Pinduoduo of AI.
The Pinduoduo of AI. What does that even mean?
Well, Pinduoduo is this huge Chinese e-commerce platform known for disrupting the market. Crazy low prices, group buying. So you see the comparison.
Right, so they're shaking things up in the AI world, stacking these powerful models. Way more affordable.
More accessible to, well, everyone.
Researchers, developers, even everyday users like us.
Yeah.
Okay, that's huge. So we've got the potential game changer, open source,
Yeah.
super affordable. But what makes DeepSeek R1 itself so special? Is it just the price, or is there more to it?
Oh, it's definitely more than just the price tag, though that is a big factor, of course. DeepSeek R1, it's built upon their previous model, DeepSeek V3, which was already making a name for itself in terms of efficiency and performance.
Okay, so they took something good and made it even better.
Right.
How did they do that?
Well, they made some interesting choices in how they trained it. They used reinforcement learning a lot, but, and this is key, they didn't rely heavily on supervised fine-tuning
Oh, interesting.
like a lot of other models do. They let the model learn and evolve more on its own.
You're saying they let this AI teach itself? Sounds risky.
Well, there were some bumps along the way, for sure.
I can.
Earlier versions, like DeepSeek R10, sometimes struggled with readability, even mixed languages in the responses. But that's where the aha moment came in.
Oh, what happened?
They realized the model needed some initial guidance, a sort of jumpstart, with human-friendly data.
So they gave it a little nudge in the right direction and let it run wild.
Exactly. They fine-tuned it with tons of examples that emphasized clear reasoning, and a human-readable format. Then they threw all sorts of tasks at it: math problems, coding challenges, logic puzzles. Used reinforcement learning to refine its abilities.
So what were the results?
Pretty astonishing.
All right, you've definitely got me curious. But let's be real. Why should I care about DeepSeek R1?
Yeah.
I mean, I only know the basics about ChatGPT.
Well, that's the exciting part. Remember how you can run DeepSeek R1 locally
Yeah.
on your own computer?
Wow.
Well, there's this application called LM Studio. Makes it super easy. Works on Mac OS, Windows, even Linux.
Okay, now you're talking my language.
Mhm.
But why would I want to run it locally? Isn't ChatGPT just easier?
Well, running DeepSeek R1 locally has a whole bunch of advantages.
Hmm.
First and foremost, privacy.
Go
Your
for it.
data stays on your computer. You don't have to send anything to the cloud. No relying on a third-party API like with ChatGPT. And that leads to the next big advantage: cost.
Makes sense.
You can potentially save a lot of money running it locally instead of paying for API access. And get this, you can even use it offline.
Whoa, hold on. So I'm in control of my data. I'm saving money, and I can use it without internet. I'm starting to see why people are excited about this. But is there anything else? Anything else that makes it special?
Oh, absolutely. DeepSeek R1 actually lets you peek into its thought process.
Wait, what?
They call it chain of thought,
Chain of thought.
or code to T.
Ooh.
You can actually see how it's reasoning through a problem, step by step.
I could see the AI thinking, what would I even do with that?
Well, it's incredibly valuable for learning. You can gain insights into how it approaches problems, maybe even pick up some new problem-solving techniques yourself.
Right.
It adds a layer of transparency that you don't get with other AI models.
Makes sense.
You're not just blindly trusting a black box.
Yeah.
You can see how it's arriving at its answers.
That is really cool. So it's powerful, affordable, open source, transparent. This DeepSeek R1 sounds like the real deal.
It's a game changer, for sure. But like any emerging tech, it's not perfect. Some users have said that it can be a bit sensitive to how you phrase your prompts,
Oh, interesting.
And it's still under development.
So there's room for improvement.
Always.
So it's powerful, but you still need to know how to talk to it.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
But that's also part of what makes it so exciting. We're witnessing the evolution of a cutting-edge AI model in real time. And with it being open source, who knows what advancements are just around the corner.
All right, I'm on board. DeepSeek R1, powerful, affordable, and a glimpse into the mind of an AI. But I want to know more about what it can actually do. Can it write a screenplay? Help me code? How does it stack up against the big names in those areas?
Those are all great questions, and that's exactly what we're going to be exploring next. Let's delve into the specifics of what DeepSeek R1 can actually do. So you're curious about what DeepSeek R1 can actually do. Let's start with something I think a lot of people are interested in. Creative writing. I mean, we all know large language models have been making waves there. But DeepSeek R1 brings something new to the table. Remember that chain of thought feature we talked about?
Yeah, you mentioned it.
It's a game changer for writers.
Okay, but how does seeing how it thinks actually help me write better?
Let's say you want to write a short story about, I don't know, time travel, but with a dark cyberpunk twist, right?
Okay, yeah.
You ask DeepSeek R1 to take a stab at it. Now, as it's generating the story, you're not just seeing the text, you're seeing its thought process unfold right alongside it. You can see it wrestling with different themes, experimenting with plot twists, even playing around with the tone and style of the language.
So it's like having an AI brainstorming partner that's constantly generating ideas. Yeah. Letting me peek into its creative process.
Exactly. And because you can see its thought process laid out like that. You can actually interact with it. You can nudge it in different directions.
No, interesting.
If you see it heading down a path you don't like, you can point out inconsistencies, suggest alternative approaches, even challenge its assumptions.
Wow.
It's like having a co-writer who's always up for a good debate.
That's pretty amazing. Sounds like it could really help writers break through those creative blocks, come up with fresh ideas. But what about something a little more practical? Could it help with coding?
Absolutely. In fact, DeepSeek R1 is particularly good at coding challenges, especially the ones that require that complex reasoning and problem solving. It can help with things like algorithm design, code optimization, even bug fixing. And remember, you're not just getting a chunk of code, you're seeing the logic behind it step by step, thanks to that chain of thought feature.
So it's like having an AI tutor, walking me through the code, explaining each line, each decision along the way.
Exactly. And because you can see the thought process behind the code, you can actually learn from it. You can start to understand why it made certain choices, the trade-offs it considered, the potential pitfalls it avoided.
That sounds incredibly helpful, especially for someone who's learning to code.
For sure.
All right, I'm sold. But let's be real for a minute. There's a lot of hype around AI these days. New models popping up left and right. Where does DeepSeek R1 fit into all of this? How does it stack up against the heavy hitters, like ChatGPT?
That's the question everyone's asking. It's a tough one to answer definitively. Benchmarking these models is complex. There's a lot of debate about which metrics matter, which ones really capture real-world performance.
Right.
But here's what we can say. When it comes to raw reasoning ability, DeepSeek R1 can definitely hold its own against models like ChatGPT, especially in areas like math, logic, and coding. There are even some benchmarks where it seems to outperform ChatGPT, especially the ones focused on planning and problem solving.
Wow, so it can really go head-to-head with ChatGPT, in terms of brain power at least. But what about the user experience? What's it actually like to use DeepSeek R1 compared to, ChatGPT?
Well, this is where being open source really shines, because you can run it locally with LM Studio. You have a lot more control over the whole experience. You can tweak the settings, experiment with different parameters, even customize the interface. Plus, you have those added benefits of privacy and potential cost savings that we talked about earlier.
So it's more customizable. And potentially more user-friendly?
In a lot of ways, yes. And then there's that chain of thought element adds a whole other dimension to the interaction, being able to see its reasoning process. Gives you a much deeper understanding of how it works. Opens up possibilities for collaboration and learning you just don't get with those other models.
It sounds like DeepSeek R1 is pushing the boundaries here. But you mentioned earlier, it's not perfect. What are some of the limitations?
You're right, it's still under development. There are areas where it can improve. One thing some users have noticed is that it can be a little sensitive to how you phrase your prompts.
Interesting.
To get the best results. Sometimes you need a little finesse in how you ask your questions.
So it's powerful.
Right.
But you still need to know how to talk to it.
Right.
Are there any other limitations?
Well, it's also worth noting that DeepSeek R1 doesn't support some of the more advanced features yet that other models are starting to offer, like the ability to call external tools or APIs directly. Developers are working on it. But it's a good reminder this technology is still evolving.
That's fair. It sounds like DeepSeek R1 is this incredibly powerful tool with a lot of potential,
Yeah.
but it's still early days.
Mm.
Are there any other things people should keep in mind if they're thinking about, diving in and trying it out?
Absolutely. One thing that's really important to remember is that DeepSeek R1, like all large language models, is trained on a massive amount of data. And that data, it reflects the biases and perspectives that exist in the real world.
So even though it's this incredibly sophisticated AI, it's still susceptible to the same biases we see in human society.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Anyway.
And that's why it's so important to be aware of those potential biases and to use the model responsibly. It's not a magic solution, it's a tool. Like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill.
That's a really important point. Easy to get caught up in the excitement of new technology, but we always have to remember, with great power comes great responsibility. But let's shift gears for a second. We've talked about DeepSeek R1's capabilities, its limitations. But what about the bigger picture? What are the implications of this kind of technology? Becoming widely available, what does it mean for the future of work, for education, for society as a whole?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Honestly, we're all still figuring that out. But one thing's for sure, the availability of these powerful AI tools, like DeepSeek R1, it's going to have a profound impact on just about every aspect of our lives.
Okay, so where do we even begin to unpack all of that? What are some of the key areas where we might see the biggest changes?
Well, let's start with something that's on a lot of people's minds these days, the future of work.
So the future of work in the age of AI. I think a lot of people are worried about robots taking over their jobs. Is that a realistic fear, or is it a bit overblown?
I can see why people would worry about that, but I think the reality is a bit more nuanced. While AI will automate some tasks, for sure, it's also going to create new opportunities, maybe even new types of jobs that we can't even imagine right now.
So instead of thinking about it as a complete takeover, we should be thinking about how it can change the way we work, maybe even make our jobs better.
Right, exactly. Think of it as augmentation rather than replacement. Imagine doctors using AI as a second opinion, helping them analyze medical scans, identifying potential issues they might have missed, or architects using AI to generate designs, simulate structural integrity. It's about leveraging the strengths of both.
Humans and AI.
Exactly, to achieve better outcomes.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not about AI versus humans. It's about AI and humans working together. But even if we embrace this idea of collaboration, aren't there still potential downsides? I mean, we've all seen those sci-fi movies. AI goes rogue. Are those concerns valid? Or are we getting ahead of ourselves?
I think those concerns are definitely worth considering. As with any powerful technology, there are risks. I think one of the biggest challenges is making sure AI is aligned with human values. That means developing ethical guidelines for how it's developed and used, making sure it's designed to benefit humanity as a whole, not just a select few.
So it's not just about building smarter AI. It's about building responsible AI. But who's responsible for doing that? Is it up to the tech companies developing these models? Or does it require a broader societal conversation?
I think it's a responsibility we all share. Tech companies have a role to play, of course, designing AI systems with safety and ethics in mind. But governments, policymakers, researchers, even everyday citizens, we all need to be part of the conversation, asking those tough questions about the potential consequences, working together to develop safeguards and regulations.
That's a lot to think about. But how can someone who's not a tech expert get involved in this conversation? It can all feel a bit overwhelming.
Yeah, it can be a lot to process. But honestly, the most important thing anyone can do is stay informed and engage in critical thinking. Read articles, listen to podcasts, attend events, ask questions. The future of AI isn't something that's going to be decided in a vacuum. It's a conversation we all need to be a part of.
I love that. The more we talk about these issues, the better equipped we'll be to navigate the challenges and harness the opportunities that AI presents. Well, this has been a really insightful deep dive into DeepSeek R1 and the broader implications of this AI revolution. It's clear that we're at a pivotal moment. The choices we make today will shape the future of AI for generations to come. What's your final takeaway for our listeners?
My takeaway is this: AI is no longer some futuristic concept. It's here, it's powerful, and it's becoming more and more accessible. DeepSeek R1 is a perfect example of that. This is an invitation to explore, to experiment, to think critically about the role AI will play in our lives.
And who knows, maybe some of our listeners will be inspired to contribute to the development of this technology. It helps steer it in a direction that benefits all of humanity.
Absolutely. We all have a role to play in shaping the future of AI.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of DeepSeek R1. We'll be back next week with another fascinating topic, so be sure to tune in.